So this video has been in the works for a little while now. I have been curating my list of top 10 underrated vampire films. Obviously what's underrated to some may not be underrated to others, but hopefully there'll be something on this list that you haven't seen before. I have my vampire cup and my vampire ambience in the background. So just a quick disclaimer before this video starts. I'm going to try my best not to talk about spoilers, but it may be a spoiler that some of these are vampire films. Although I do think it is in all of these ones marketing in either the descriptions or the trailer. But if you are someone who really wants to go into films blind, then this probably isn't the video for you. I will be avoiding any spoiler talk about anything other than that they are literally vampire films, and just a brief overview of each one and a few thoughts. My first recommendation is Humanist Vampire, Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person. Sasha is a teen vampire who is struggling with growing up as she must come off of her pre-packaged blood supply and learn to kill for herself. But she doesn't like that idea at all, as it goes against her morals. Her family keep on at her and decide to finally cut off her blood supply, leaving her with no choice other than to go out on her own. She ends up meeting Paul, who is struggling with suicidal thoughts, and offers his life up to Sasha. She agrees to this deal, but wants to make sure that his last wishes are fulfilled before going through with anything. Firstly, I absolutely love the obnoxiously long title. I feel like you can just tell it's an indie film from that. In this film, we spend most of our time following these two teens as they build a relationship, get to know each other and navigate life as teenagers. This is very much a coming of age story. They are both really likable characters, especially when they're together. You can tell that they are both really gentle and sensitive, and they have a really strong and intense bond, which happens quite instantly when they meet. It's very wholesome and heartwarming, which sounds kind of weird when talking about a horror film, but the horror elements aren't super strong. They are still there, but it is kind of more of a drama. This is very different from your regular vampire film, which is nice because it kind of differs from the others on this list, although a lot of them are very different and do stand out for different reasons. This is absolutely perfect if you're looking for something to watch that feels kind of cozy and a little bit happier and less intense than some of the other films on this list. You can watch this film on Mubi. Next up is a film from the 80s, and that is Vampire's Kiss. Following a one-night stand where Peter gets bitten on the neck by the mysterious lady that he brings home, we see a whirlwind of events that follow as Peter believes that he may be transforming into something supernatural. This film is so funny. It's the kind of funny that is timeless. Nicolas Cage is brilliant with a fantastically hilarious performance. Whenever I see a horror film or a horror adjacent film starring Nicolas Cage, I just know it's going to be a wacky, silly and a very entertaining time. I feel like that mixed with it being from the 80s is a recipe for perfection. I absolutely love 80s film. I actually hadn't heard of this film until a few years ago. I rarely hear people speak about this film. I'm not sure if it's like my generation or if it is actually underrated. Maybe it's one that was more popular but now has slowly gone under the radar. You can watch Vampire's Kiss on MGM+. The next film is My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To. Another one with a very long title. Yes, this is another indie film. Siblings Dwight and Jesse are in a really stressful and difficult situation. They are lost for what to do because of their little brother Thomas is very unwell. They try their best to look after him and give him a normal life, but they are really struggling. This is definitely the saddest film on the list, but it is a really interesting concept, and we get to see a whole other side to vampirism, which we don't usually see. I really do appreciate when films take a really well-known concept like the ideas of vampires and kind of all the traditional things that we would think about when thinking about vampires in media, but then they take that concept and they kind of do something really different and creative with it. They use it in a different way and kind of make you see it from a different perspective, and that is exactly what this film does. It is a very well-made film with an ending that does just feel inevitable. The whole film has kind of a moody feeling to it. It is a really heart-wrenching family drama. It does have a little bit of gore, although I do wish that there were more. You can rent or buy this film on Prime Video. The next film is House of Darkness. After meeting a girl at his local bar, Hap decides to go back with her once the night has ended to her remote home, thinking it's just going to be a casual hookup. Unfortunately for Hap, things start getting a little strange back at her place. This stars Justin Long, and if you've seen him in any other horror film, then you probably know that things don't usually go too well for him, and that is also the case in this film. He seems to always be getting himself into really stressful and quite scary situations. I have seen mixed reviews for this film, which I do understand because it probably is the kind of slowest film on this list. There isn't a whole load of action. It does have a very casual feel to it, but for me, I did really enjoy it as a chilled watch. I liked that it had the feeling of something was just not quite right from the beginning. I spent most of my viewing experience just really wanting to know how Hap was going to get himself out of this situation. So if you're looking for something not too intense and without any massive twists, then this is a good one to chuck on in the evening. You can stream House of Darkness on Prime Video. The next film on my list is Abigail. A group of criminals are hired for a high-profile job where they must kidnap the daughter of a powerful figure. They start this job and take the little girl, held up inside a mansion with her, demanding ransom money, but they soon realise that they would much prefer to get the hell out of that house than what this job is worth. This is one of the most recent films on this list and probably the most popular because it was in cinemas only last year. Abigail is a horror comedy. It is so much fun and just a wild ride. I would say that this type of film is also really good for teens and beginners because although there are horror elements, the comedy kind of balances it out nicely. It has an incredible cast. It stars Melissa Barrera and Catherine Newton, who are two of my favourite actors in horror at the moment. They've both recently been in quite a few really good films. They are both kind of usually in horror comedies. I feel like they fit really well in that subgenre. Their performances never let me down. Of course, we also have the star of the show, which is the child actor Alicia Weir. She gives a hilarious and super creepy performance. Abigail is available to buy or rent on Prime Video. My next recommendation is actually a sequel, and that is Fright Night Part 2. 3 years after the events of Fright Night, Charlie Brewster is now in college but begins having vampire issues again as a group are actively seeking him out. The original Fright Night from 1985 is one of my all-time favourite horror films ever, so although to me this one doesn't compare because of how highly I think of the first one, I do still think this is a really good film. It's an amazing sequel and just a good vampire film overall. Obviously, if you haven't seen the original Fright Night, then definitely watch that one. I didn't want to include it in this video because I know that it is quite popular. Although there are a few popular ones on this list, I think that one is a bit too popular for this list to be underrated. So that's why I've included part 2 instead, because I really don't see that many people speak about this one. Very much like the first film, this one is just a load of fun, campy, and just a good time. It has some of the original cast members from the first film, which is really exciting to see them again in their same roles. Annoyingly, due to issues with rights for this film, it was only briefly released on DVD, but shortly after that it stopped, so it's really hard to find a physical copy. I don't actually have one at the moment. There just aren't that many out there, and the few that are out there are quite expensive, but I have heard that this year the rights have been cleared and it should be released next year, which I am so excited about. I really hope we get some sort of cool collector's edition, maybe both the films in one or a steelbook or something. That would be so exciting. I can't wait to finally own this film. You can watch Fright Night Part 2 on YouTube. My next recommendation is a film from 2010, and that is Stakeland. In a post-apocalyptic world, a vampire plague has consumed the majority of society, with only a few survivors remaining. A teenage boy called Martin is scared and lost on what to do until he comes across a vampire hunter who takes him in and lets him travel with him. So this film is very similar to how zombie films kind of usually play out, with there being a few survivors and then loads of zombies, with people trying to navigate the world and avoid zombies as they do that. But instead of the typical vampires that we're used to that are kind of more humanoid and have thoughts and feelings, these ones aren't as smart. These ones do kind of act more like zombies. This is action-packed. It does have some jump scares and some really creepy moments. It's not the most original film. Like I said before, it is very similar to some zombie films, but obviously what makes it different is that they are vampires instead. It is a fun watch and it is quite underrated when it it comes to vampire films. I used to really love this film when I was a teen, so it probably does make me a little more biased to liking it because it holds some nostalgia to me. It definitely doesn't lack entertainment value. You can buy or rent Stakeland on Prime Video. Next on my list is Daybreakers. In a dystopian future, a virus has turned the majority of the human population into vampires. There are barely any humans left, which serves as a threat to the vampires as it means they're running out of blood supplies. They have factories where they are farming humans for their blood, but there just aren't enough anymore. We follow a researcher as he works with the vampires and tries to find a solution. So this film came out in 2009 and it's set in a dystopian future, but the funny thing is that the year that it's set in is 2019, so obviously watching it now, having passed 2019 quite a while ago, is quite funny. It's a really interesting concept. Is it the best vampire film? Definitely not, but it is fun and different, and it does have quite a bit of action as well. Daybreakers stars William Dafoe and Ethan Hawke as two of the main leads. I really love both these actors and it's really interesting to see them in this film together. I've really grown as a fan of William Dafoe in the last few years, especially because I really appreciate his work in Robert Eggers films. With Ethan Hawke, I only really kind of knew of him from Sinister, and then recently have seen him in more and more films and really liked all of his performances in those. Don't go into this one expecting too much because it does have some cheesy moments and it does kind of get a little bit repetitive, but it is a very entertaining watch. You can rent or buy Daybreakers on Prime Video. My second to last film is 30 Days of Night. In a rural Alaskan town, they are plagued with a month of complete darkness each year. As soon as the sun sets for the final time at the beginning of that month, a group of bloodthirsty vampires begin to enter the town looking to claim victims. This film is a little bit more popular than some of the other ones, especially in the horror community. I have seen a few people speak about this film, but I did want to include it because I do think it is still quite underrated. The vampires are actually really creepy and there is also a nice amount of gore. There is also some jump scares, one that I remember getting to me in particular when I first watched it. Despite the vampires, the fact that this town has a whole month of complete darkness is absolutely terrifying to begin with and just really sets the whole tone of this film. I would definitely not be going anywhere near a town that has a month of complete darkness because that just sounds like there's going to be trouble. This stars Melissa George, who I have spoken about before because she's in quite a few films that I really like, especially ones from my teenage years like Triangle, Paradise Lost, and of course this one. She is such a great actor and has a really nostalgic value for me. You can buy or rent 30 Days of Night on Prime Video. My last recommendation is from the 80s and that is Vamp. Three college students decide that they want to hire a stripper for their college fraternity. They head to a local strip club, but little do they know that the stripper that they take a fancy to ends up being a vampire. These boys end up being in for a extremely wild night that they did not expect. This is an absolute wild ride. It is just so much fun. It is so visually stunning to look at with all of the colours and neon lighting. If you're looking for something really entertaining, then this is definitely one to watch because there never is a dull moment. It's a horror comedy. It is very aware of itself. It doesn't take itself too seriously. This is 80s horror at its finest. When thinking about 80s vampire films, we usually think about The Lost Boys or Fright Night, but not many people mention this film and it is so worthy of being in the list of the best 80s vampire films. You can stream Vamp on Prime Video. So that is the end of my list today of my top 10 underrated vampire horror films. Of course, I love so many other vampire films, but I just wanted to narrow it down. Do let me know what films you would add to this list and also let me know what other top 10 horror films you would like to see next. As always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you again in another one soon.